Hello, everyone, and welcome to our presentation on co-creation. Do your customers inspire you? I'm Kevin Lonnie, CEO of KL Communications. I'm joined today by my associate and VP of Community Services, Lisa Fuchs.
Hello, I'm glad you can join us today.
Hey, Lisa and I are both very excited to have this opportunity to speak with you today on one of our very favorite topics, customer and employee co-creation. But first, a quick housekeeping rule. Please use the chat box in the top right of your screen for questions. We will respond to your questions throughout the session, and we should finish a few minutes early because we have recorded this. So if a question occurs to you at the end, we will be here to answer it. To get things going, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Lisa, who will address the core question of this session. Just what is co-creation? Lisa?
Thank you, Kevin. So co-creation is a way for you to incorporate your customer through all stages of the product development process. The opportunity for disruptive innovation can really be a game changer in a time where a shift in the way things are done is imminent due to the pandemic. Even when things go back to normal or the new normal is determined, the traditional 10% success rate for new products is no longer going to be acceptable. Through customer co-creation, though, you can dramatically improve those odds if done correctly. When a company co-creates, it brings aboard third-party individuals as advisors. That group can be made up of consumers, vendors, designers, suppliers, marketers, retailers, and really assorted experts in the field. Co-creation can be far more informative than traditional techniques for identifying what products to bring to market, and it yields deeper insights. For years, brands relied on static tools like online surveys, telephone polls, questionnaires handed out in person. However, people often respond to those methods half-heartedly, or they might simply say what they think companies want to hear. Also, some respondents have little knowledge about the subject at hand, which can skew the results. By contrast, when several knowledgeable, passionate people are brought together, they can have robust and dynamic discussions. Those conversations often spiral into unexpected areas, and they can spark bold ideas that no one group member would have thought of alone. Co-creation really has always been around in some form. Humans have always worked together to solve problems and learn. There's tons of examples throughout history, but here's just a few from more recent times. In 1714, the British government awarded a prize for developing a reliable method of calculating the longitude of a vessel while at sea. The winner was a clockmaker. In 1783, French King Louis XVI awarded a prize to anyone who could figure out how to make pure soda. This actually led to the Leblanc process, which was widely used throughout the 19th century to make soda. And then let's flash forward to 1919, when Planters Peanuts started a design contest to develop their logo. In all of these examples, the crowd was tapped to come up with a solution, not so-called experts. Within the last few decades, really with the invention of the internet, co-creation as a concept in business and mainstream vernacular has become more popular. With the web, interaction across large groups at various locations became possible. This led to crowdsourcing, which put the customer firmly at the beginning of the product development cycle. Then in the last decade came CrowdWeaving, which is our proprietary co-creation methodology where you can ideate and collaborate with your customers by presenting them with a challenge to solve and tapping into their inner creativity. CrowdWeaving actually took crowdsourcing a step further by incorporating that element of collaboration into the process, which really enabled the creation of more robust ideas born of inspiration from both client and customer. So to understand more about how CrowdWeaving was born, I'm going to turn things over to Kevin now.
Thanks, Lisa. Every company claims to be customer-centric, but when it comes to product ideation, I've always felt that customers are underutilized. Whether it's R&D creating on their own or internal teams operating in a silo, customer input gets short-shifted. Even as researchers, we typically conduct reactive research. For example, in concept testing, the customer is only providing feedback to someone else's idea. It's like being a passenger in a car. You're not in control of the destination. So we wanted to enable customer inspiration from the start of the ideation process. And equally important, we would share this inspiration with the internal creative teams right from the get-go, making this a dynamic, interactive process that breaks down silos. In this way, internal experts are guided to a better starting point. In other words, we're weaving customer inspiration throughout the ideation process. Thus, CrowdWeaving was born. So Lisa and I kicked around several ideas to demonstrate CrowdWeaving for you.
We decided the best way for you was to really directly experience it. But since the pandemic put a kibosh on any live demonstrations, we tried to do the next best thing, and we created a simulated live experience. So this video is our live experience, and this is the world premiere this morning at Quirks.
There you go. So the first part of our video delves into the requirements of successful co-creation. It explores the delicate balance between divergent customer inspiration followed by convergent focus. And understanding how these forces interact, now that became the blueprint for developing CrowdWeaving.
The next section demonstrates how CrowdWeaving works in an interactive demo.
So sit back, enjoy the video. Lisa and I will be back at the end, and we hope you like it. As a kid growing up in Asbury Park, New Jersey, I spent hours playing this game, Shoot the Moon, at the local YMCA while I waited for my parents to pick me up. The simplicity of the game, it's just a silver ball and a couple of metal rods, belies the complex forces at work here. The use of gravity to accelerate the ball on its path up the incline is the same principle used during lunar excursions to accelerate and decelerate the spacecraft. Just as impressive, the game dates back to the 1940s, and they named it even then, Shoot the Moon, 20 years before Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin ever set foot on the moon. How cool is that? The crazy fun aspect of this game is you are literally rolling a ball uphill because of the tension achieved by the silver rods. Of course, what does a 75-year-old game have to do with the wisdom of crowds and customer co-creation? Everything. The wisdom of crowds, that term, it's a misnomer. It's inherently appealing but difficult to extract. What we're actually looking for is, quote, the aggregated independent wisdom of crowds effect, end quote. Sociologists term it the WCE. So when folks talk about the wisdom of crowds, they're really referring to the wisdom of crowds effect. So next time you're on a Zoom meeting and someone brings up the wisdom of crowds, score some points by saying, oh, you mean the wisdom of crowds effect. Well, how do we actually extract the WCE? We must think differently. As researchers, and this is especially true under tight budgets that we're all experiencing right now, we shortchange analysis and focus our efforts immediately on synthesis. We're not giving disruptive ideas a chance to even take root. The wisdom of crowds effect is represented by the silver ball. The ball is powered by a constant force, gravity. It is just waiting to be unleashed. So the metal rods, they represent the variable tension. You have control over the timing of that tension. In order to achieve the wisdom of crowds effect, you must release the ball. It can't roll uphill without unleashing the power of gravity. The tension created by the metal rods represents convergence and singular focus. You descend via gravity, and then you ascend via tension. That's why the game is such an apt metaphor for successful customer co-creation. You can't ascend via the tension of synthesis if you shortchange the energy created by divergent, independent thinking. Now, achieving the wisdom of crowds effect is both an art and a science. You need to obtain the energy achieved by independent ideation, and then with perfect timing, squeeze the resulting chaos into clear themes. It requires perfect balance and timing, just like Shoot the Moon. And of course, your initial efforts will probably be a little disappointing. You'll probably get a couple of low scores, then become bolder and let the ball fall too soon. This is what happens in the real world when the wisdom of crowds descends into the madness of crowds. To gain ascension requires skill, perfect timing, and patience. Lots and lots of patience. For me, the parallel between the wisdom of crowds and shoot the moon is intriguing. It doesn't surprise me that crowds operate under the same scientific principles as gravity and tension. For our purposes, we need to stoke the chaos of individual creativity because that's where the wisdom comes from. Traditional attempts at co-creation, like brainstorming, are disappointing because they lack that individual ideation. Being social creatures, crowds inevitably turn into herds, and the magic, the wisdom of crowd effect, that just disappears. For those of us who seek to harness the wisdom of crowds, the scientific parallel, that shows us the game plan. It's an opportunity waiting to be realized. Harnessing the wisdom of crowds is hard, but we've mastered the recipe. 5 years ago, we introduced a successful co-creation methodology called CrowdWeaving, and it's based on the same principles of individual ideation, your chaos, followed by synthesis and tension. What CrowdWeaving achieves is it weaves the inspiration of customers throughout the entire product service ideation process. So how is CrowdWeaving different from crowdsourcing? Well, crowdsourcing, that's like taking your ideas completely from outside sources. You're basically asking your customers to come up with new ideas. CrowdWeaving weaves that inspiration of customers and acts as an inspiration for your internal creative team. This helps get them to a better starting point. And at the same time, having CrowdWeaving throughout the process acts as a compass, making sure your efforts never go off target. All right, hopefully by now you want to see how CrowdWeaving works. So let me turn it over to my associate, Lisa Fuchs, and she's going to demonstrate exactly how CrowdWeaving can inspire your internal creative team.
Thank you, Kevin. As Kevin said, my name is Lisa Fuchs and I'm Vice President of Community Services at KLC. I'm about to take you through a live demo of CrowdWeaving and give you a bit more information about the CrowdWeaving process. But before I do that, I just wanted to point out that while this is a pre-recorded presentation, we are here with you live, watching along, and we're available for any questions that you might have. So please feel free to use the chat option to the top right of your screen and ask us anything you'd like to know about CrowdWeaving or anything that we have to offer. We'd love to hear from you. Let's get started. CrowdWeaving incorporates 3 tenets that are key to generating innovative solutions for new products and services: ideation, collaboration, and evaluation. Through this proprietary co-creation methodology, you can tap into your customers' inner creativity to generate robust ideas born of inspiration from both client and customer. In CrowdWeaving, participants are presented with a challenge or problem to solve and are asked to come up with solutions both on their own and with their fellow participants. We say challenge because we try to make it into a game for participants, so they really have fun and get their creative juices flowing. They can earn points or prizes for different levels of participation. So for participants, this is a fun and interactive way to come up with ideas for new products and services. In a typical CrowdWeaving challenge, there are 3 phases based on the tenets I mentioned earlier. Phase 1 is ideation. Here we pose consumers with their challenge and ask them to submit their ideas for products, services, and other solutions through independent ideation. To help them and give them context when they're creating their idea, we also give them guidelines so they come up with a potentially viable idea, but don't go too far and suggest something that is not feasible. After a few days, we go to phase 2, where we open up the challenge for collaboration. Here, participants work together to further develop and improve each other's ideas. This serves to flesh out ideas and start the process of turning them into concepts. But it also gives consumers who may not be as comfortable posting ideas initially, but who still have something to offer, a chance to weigh in on what they feel can be added to improve on the original ideas. After the ideas are created and honed through that collaboration phase, we enter phase 3, evaluation. Here, we ask participants to rate and rank their favorite ideas, which allows us to uncover opportunities with broad appeal as well as sparks of innovation. By asking participants to vote for their favorite ideas and then rank the ideas in order of which they most prefer, we're able to see not only what resonates with the group as a whole, but we're also able to identify which ideas may not be as popular, but have key elements that can appeal to different customer segments. With this co-creative approach to consumer insight, we're able to identify pain points, unmet needs, and drivers that consumers don't typically articulate in traditional research. This is done in an iterative environment within our co-creation community, where an ongoing dialogue is created and can be maintained long-term, creating a true collaboration between stakeholders and consumers. Now, I mentioned earlier that for participants, a CrowdWeaving challenge is presented as a game. To close out their experience, the top ideas are declared winners and go on to a final round of evaluation to identify the top idea from the consumer's perspective. Since this is co-creation and not just idea generation, the client is also involved in the process, from seeding ideas to gauge interest, to collaborating with participants to build the ideas into concepts. Ultimately, this approach is both iterative and collaborative in nature and engages researchers, consumers, marketers, engineers, brand managers, pretty much anyone with a stake in the outcome. And it's important to note that CrowdWeaving can not only help you create new products and services, but it can inspire new technologies, programs, and processes. The applications are endless. Now that we've talked about how CrowdWeaving works, let's demonstrate it for you. This demo is based on an actual CrowdWeaving challenge that we conducted a few years ago in our co-creation community for early tech adapters called TAP, or the Trends Advisory Panel. I'm going to walk you through this recreated challenge so you can see how it works. First, participants are presented with their challenge. It's set up to include an introduction that gives participants some context and puts them into the right mindset for the exercise. Then, participants are tasked with their challenge and given a set of guidelines to help them think through the best possible solution. Guidelines are designed to help participants craft well thought out ideas that provide articulate, clear solutions. We recommend that participants take some time to process the challenge and guideline questions in order to formulate a strong idea that has merit and can advance through the challenge. Once a participant has come up with their solution, they can post it to the CrowdWeaving board. Ideation is independent, which means they will not be able to see any other ideas until theirs is posted. Participants are encouraged to use any medium they can to articulate and illustrate their ideas, including text, images, screenshots, videos, etc. We've actually had participants post GIFs they've made, collages, and even pictures of specks they drew out on cocktail napkins to make their point. They're encouraged to be as creative as possible, both in the idea itself and how they articulate it. Once the idea is posted, the participant can see the other ideas. We typically invite about 100 participants to a challenge and see anywhere between 50 and 100 ideas posted. Participants are now asked to collaborate or review the other ideas and work together with the author of the idea and other participants to discuss pros and cons of each idea and make suggestions for improvement. Throughout the challenge, a curator acts as liaison between client and participant. Rather than moderating, the curator takes a more backroom approach and lets the participants build out the ideas with minimal coaching. The curator only posts comments to encourage authors to clarify or add to their ideas or ask questions directly from the client. Ultimately, the curator's role is to maintain the environment of co-creation for all involved. After reviewing the ideas, the participants are asked to identify which are their favorites, up to 20, and then rank their favorites to indicate which resonate most and which are eligible for further exploration or development into concepts. The top 10 ideas are advanced to a final evaluation round where, after some refinement based on participant and client feedback, they undergo another round of ranking, this time using a wallet system, to identify the most appealing ideas. With the wallet system, each participant is given 100 virtual dollars to spend on as many or as few ideas as they want, based on their preferences. This helps us determine winning ideas from a participant perspective, but it also indicates which ideas may resonate most with consumers and should be considered for further exploration. Clients can observe the challenge live in two ways. They can read along on the platform itself, and they can see which ideas are rising to the top using the Insights dashboard. And this is how a CrowdWeaving challenge works in action. Now that we've walked you through how a CrowdWeaving challenge works, we want to go over how the results can be used to help you innovate. As previously mentioned, the challenge we just walked through was an actual innovation project conducted in our TAP online community. This blind community, sponsored by Verizon, was comprised of customers of one of the big four mobile phone carriers. This gave us a chance to compare Verizon responses to their competitors. Specifically, for this initiative, Verizon wanted to understand if they could develop a product to enter into the smart car tech space. At this time, this was an innovative idea that was a big departure for them from their usual telecommunications space. They turned to the TAP community to help determine needs and interest, then to help create and test the product. First was the CrowdWeaving challenge. CrowdWeaving identified the right insights and ideas for introduction into this space, and the tenets of collaboration and evaluation took these ideas further. Verizon used the community to test and refine concepts that were born from CrowdWeaving ideas in an iterative fashion, ultimately culminating in the development of the Hum product, a way to make your dumb car a smart car. That product still occupies a prominent place in Verizon's portfolio. All this happened because Verizon asked their customers to build the ideal smart car through CrowdWeaving. This is just one demonstration of how CrowdWeaving can help you innovate. Through a co-creation community in CrowdWeaving, you can ideate, collaborate, and evaluate to innovate your brand. The possibilities are endless. We are now at the end of our CrowdWeaving demonstration. We hope you found it both enjoyable and informative.
If you'd like to learn more about CrowdWeaving or conduct your own challenge, please feel free to reach out to Kevin or myself. We'd be glad to help you with that.
Lisa and I hope you found our presentation both enlightening and useful. We would be more than happy to share white papers we've written about customer co-creation. So just take a picture of this QR code on the screen with your cell phone and you will be able to immediately download those links. And just like you, we've been watching our pre-recorded presentation, and now we would be more than happy to address any questions in real time. Once again, thanks for watching.